Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Darrell, for inviting me. Thanks, STM, for this day. I think it's exceptionally important that we spend time looking specifically at what societies are struggling with, what they do well, and where we can share best practices with each other. It's also to the earlier conversation this morning about sort of how you get into publishing. I stumbled into publishing, but I absolutely love it. And just to point out, like there were today 2 announcements from the Washington Post that I got. One is they found bones in a cave that might indicate a new human species. Just sort of let that sit for a second. And for the first time, they've captured an image of a black hole today. That's science, and that's what we support. It's just phenomenal to be part of that. I love it. So the topic for today's the panel discussion is who owns the vision around technology and strategy, technology strategy in associations. We have 3 esteemed representatives here from the field, 2 from the publishing community, 1 from technology players. And we'll talk about sort of things that have gone well and things that have gone less well in the way that associations work with technology partners, whether they're internal or external. So there are 3 basic models just to keep in mind throughout our conversation. One is, as an association, you would have a technology team that reports directly into you, and you set the strategy. It is your strategy, and the technology organization is sort of wholly consumed and part of your organization. A more common model, and the one that the APA has, for instance, is we share a technology organization that services all parts of the association, and we work together with them. So we work on ways that we together set strategy and the vision, build our products. And the third one would be where you work with external partners. During our conversation today, just keep in mind sort of which of these 3 are sort of at play, and what are the pros and cons of each in shaping and making impact, because that's what it's all about. If you get this right, you're making an impact in your community. If you don't, at best, you waste a lot of time. You probably waste a lot of resources, but you could also really do a lot of damage to your community. So I enjoyed Karen McCord's conversation this morning from Breezio about the collaboration with a technology partner there, and it was ASPB, about sort of working together on a technology that engages with members. And I thought it was an excellent kind of example of the kinds of things that we're talking about today. So I have Samir from Impelsys, Elizabeth from the Optical Society, and Kevin from Enforme Interactive, who each will give some background about their organization, how they've gotten into publishing, some of the things that they're working on, and they'll have a conversation about specific examples of where the vision around technology and technology strategy is working well and is not, and what roles they've played into that. So Samir, you want to start?
Should I start? Okay. Thank you. Jasper, thank you for having me on the panel. My name is Samir Sharif. I'm the founder and CEO of Impelsys. So I think I know quite a few people here. I founded the company about 15 years ago. I've been in the publishing industry for quite a bit longer. I actually started another company that was quite successful that was sold to WebMD. And we, believe it or not, in 1995, started the first online medical bookstore at that time. So from a technology perspective, I've seen this whole evolution and transformation of how technology has actually impacted publishing. And I think since I started Impelsys, we've partnered with a lot of publishers. We have 200 plus publishers that we work with, about 40 plus societies. And the best part of my job is actually understanding how different organizations execute on their technology and digital strategies. It's really interesting. We see the problem set is the same across all organizations, but I think what Jasper said and the basis of what the topic of this panel is, who owns a vision and the strategies and how they execute. Multiple elements come into play. One is the organization itself, the culture, the people, And it's very interesting to see success and failure on one side, but also no success. And it's just, things just not optimizing the clear value that you have as an organization. And I think, one thing that I would like to discuss in today's conversation is the tremendous value that you have as a scholarly publisher, as a society, and the opportunities that you are leaving on the table because you're not grasping technology wholeheartedly in the different aspects. And I think we're excited as a company, and we've got some, I've got some tremendous examples how we can, how societies have actually optimized their core value to their member organizations. So that's a quick background of myself. Yep.
Elizabeth?
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Nolan. I work with the Optical Society. We are located a couple blocks up the road, right at DuPont Circle. 22,000 members. We focus on optics and photonics, which is a sub-area within physics. And for those of you who know the physics area, physicists and engineers tend to be much more technology-oriented and into automation. So OSA, for our publishing platform, we have our own homegrown as well as a peer review system that ties into that. So today I'll talk a little bit about how that works, what the advantages are, and then I'll also give some examples about some other systems that we have at OSA that haven't worked as well. So that's a little bit about me.
Great, thank you. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Kevin Fitzpatrick, and I'm the president and CEO of Impelsys Interactive, which is a boutique digital agency that serves scientific and medical organizations around the world. I took a non-traditional route to today's panel. I started out as an RN and a PA in the shock trauma unit at Duke Medical Center, but that was a long time ago. But it took me to a vice presidential role with Lippincott, Williams & Wilkins back in the day, and I see some former colleagues from LWW here today. That led me to the American College of Cardiology, where I served as executive vice president and chief innovation officer, and also had the publishing group reporting up to me at JAC. And then on to the American Society of Clinical Oncology, where I was CEO of CancerLink, their big data project, and did that for 3 years before moving on to now owning and operating with some partners a digital agency. So I've been on both sides of the equation, both the for-profit and the not-for-profit sides, sort of working across the blood-brain barrier, if you will. And I've seen the good and the bad, the ugly in all aspects of that. So I look forward to today's discussion and sort of talking about best practices and strategic approaches to how one weaves together technology solutions.
That's great. And I just want to start with Elizabeth. People are still building their own platforms. Just you heard that correctly. At the APA also, we've had our own peer review platform. We have our own sort of content platform too. This happens. So tell us a little bit about kind of how did it come about? If you just recently re-engaged on that, so what was the conversation within the organization? What were kind of the choices or the kind of the customer needs that you wanted to have met that resulted in you choosing to do it yourself?
So we've always had our own platform. We started out digital born that way. But in 2010, we looked at our strategic plan for publishing, and there was a real need and a cry from the volunteers that our platform wasn't quite doing what the volunteers wanted it to do. And so our 5-year plan really focused on relaunching our platform and our peer review system, as well as launching some new open access journals. And when we looked at the platform, there was a real desire, some of the volunteers would call it, to atomize the content. So they were looking beyond the journal. They were looking at how content was going to be consumed in the future. I don't think we're quite there yet for what they had in mind, but that was the idea behind it, and it was to be a best-in-class platform that we could easily compete with our commercial colleagues, and that our platform would be viewed as the place to be for optics and photonics. So with that in mind, interestingly, the staff at OSA, many of them started out in the IT area, so in the publishing side. And so there's this very strong camaraderie between the IT team and the publishing team, because many of them started there and migrated. And it was a natural fit. And I think that was one of the reasons why it worked really well. I've worked at commercial entities as well, and I think one of the things that really benefited us was what I call the solutions architect. So this is a person who is able to talk about what are the needs of the customer, and is able to translate that for the technology people and say, this is what we want, here's all the pros and cons. It's not just, I want X, it's here's all the features, here's all the things beyond that are necessary. And I think that is largely what led to the success, because this wasn't a group that went in and just said to the IT team, which I've seen happen and experienced, hey, I just want this, just get it done. Like, I need it tomorrow. This is a group that very methodically worked together to say, what's going to be the underlying infrastructure? Is it MarkLogic? Is it another platform? What are we going to do for semantic enrichment? Who are we going to use? How are we going to integrate that into our workflows? What are we going to do about UI, UX? And at every step of the way, we actually brought in outside experts to help educate both our IT team and our pubs team on what is best practice. How do you integrate that? And then we made decisions based on that by doing a lot of testing. We used our governance councils, and then we did a lot of beta testing with authors, with reviewers, with editors. And I think ultimately the team gets a lot of satisfaction, because now we have other publishers coming to us saying, hey, or other societies, can we be on your platform? Do you sell your services? We've made a conscious decision not to do that, but it's certainly something that we've been looking at as a result.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, if I could just follow up on that. I'm so glad your story had a happy ending, because where you were started out was really scaring the heck out of me. Because the road to technology hell is paved by well-intentioned board members, and who have strongly held opinions about things that they're really not expert at. Now, your constituency is a bit different. I grant you that. We have leading thought leaders in healthcare faxing us handwritten drawings as to how they think the UI should look, right? And this is happening at a major association located on Lake Michigan, and I won't tell you anything more about that. But what I've seen happen over and over again, and which is difficult, is trying to please board members, having a responsive staff who is responsive to the membership, as they should be. And then you customize and customize and customize the solutions till the point where they get very fragile, hard to maintain. And then, over time, these things get more and more off spec. And the cost and the heartache, it always comes to tears after a while if you follow down this pathway. So I'm so glad it worked out for you. It's more often, I think, a cautionary tale than a successful outcome when board members are too involved, perhaps, in the details around these solutions.
Yeah, I think for those of us who work on societies, we all work with different committees, different councils, our boards. And I think one of the things that we've worked really hard at is balancing what's the role of the volunteer, what's the role of staff. And as many of us in societies know, we have staff who've been there for a long time. And for a lot of years, our mission was really, we do whatever the volunteers want us to do. And I think one of the things we have, as part of our maturation process, it's really been to educate the volunteers what their role is and to educate them what our role is. And while we absolutely always take input, we're also really clear this is kind of that fine line. And when you say about that customization, we drew really fine lines about where we would and where we wouldn't make change. And I think the volunteers, if they trust you, if you've shown that you deliver over and over again, that they'll respect that. And it's not in a hard way that you're saying it. It's obviously in a very polite, in a very customer-oriented way. And ultimately, it's how do your downloads grow? How is your, what are your other metrics that show that your platform is performing the way it should be performing? And if you can show those types of success stories, then I think it really builds on that trust that you gain from the volunteers and that kind of division of roles and responsibilities.
I think as an organization that does thousands of projects and execution, I think just to highlight some of the key elements, I think why you have, Elizabeth, gotten success, I think a couple of things. You said that your staff has deep IT knowledge. Right? Very important. I think other organizations might not have that, but because you had that confidence to actually say, hey, we could do this by ourselves. That's one. I think second, very, very important, is communication, right? It's communication between the IT department and the business department, right? Really talking deeply together to make sure the third bit, which is design, right? Making sure your design of your product is well interpreted, not from an IT side, but really what the customer wants, which is business. So I think that's a key element. For us, we feel as we engage with our customers, a big element that, and we've learned as an organization over the years, discovery of what the customer wants is very important, because sometimes the customer wants X, the tech partner or the IT department builds Y, and that's where it starts breaking apart and the solution starts to fail. So communication, I think, is very, very important. I think the other piece that you referred to was, bringing in experts as you were trying to build, because your organization might not know everything, but bringing in the semantic experts or the cybersecurity experts, because technology is getting incredibly complex. Where we were 15 years ago, build a journal platform, build an ebook platform, that's all gone, and it's really, we're building a multi-purpose content delivery system that is, put on the cloud, which has, like Raj talked about, there's the dark cloud out there. There are criminals and the muggers, and we face it every day. We have a full, global command center that, looks after that. So it's becoming more and more complex. So having experts, consultants that can help you devise and design the right solution.
Yeah, I think one of the other important elements, and it gets back to the title of this talk, is who owns it. For us, it's a negotiation. So it's not only IT, it's not only pubs, it's really the two groups coming to the table and saying, what's the best solution and why is this the best solution? And there is a robust discussion that goes back and forth, and ultimately a decision is made, not through some consensus, but there have been times when the pubs folks have said, look, this is what the customer needs. Like, we can't bend on this. And our IT colleagues will go, okay, we get that. There have been other times when our IT colleagues have said, hey, this is absolutely a bright red line. You cannot go beyond this. And we go, okay, you guys are the experts there. And so I think that negotiation and the ability to compromise is really critical. And I will say it was part of the secret sauce for why it worked at OSA. As I said, I've been at other places where it didn't work, and I can tell another story at OSA where we're doing a cross-divisional activity where it's a lot more difficult. So it has to be a mutual respect. There's got to be negotiation, and there's got to be a lot of compromise.
I think that bidirectional dialogue that you're talking about is absolutely essential to any successful project. I would even take it up a level and talk a little bit about the strategy, right? What is it you're trying to accomplish? What what are the goals of your organization? What is the strategic intent of the initiative that you're considering? Right? And where I've seen a lot of projects go awry is where there's an organization tries to substitute a technology solution for a strategic problem that they haven't yet really clarified in their own mind. And then always then the technology didn't work, of course, right? Because your strategic underpinnings for that were not on solid ground. You didn't have consensus at a board level. So I think it's organizations understanding who they are, the constituencies they serve, the strategic intent that they want to, the outcome they want to achieve, and from that flows then logical discussions around what we're good at, what we should do, and who we need to partner with to enable that solution.
This is great. Just a quick check with the audience. I mean, this resonates, right? I mean, are you struggling with these issues, or it's just sort of resonating? I see some nodding heads. Excellent. I think this is wonderful. These are our wonderful phrase, the secret sauce, camaraderie. This is good stuff. I really appreciate that. Kevin, can you tell us a little bit more about your experience of working with ASCO, and we've heard from David earlier today as well, where the organization decided to take a collaboration with an external partner to a whole different kind of level.
Yeah, so CancerLink is a strategic initiative of the American Society of Clinical Oncology, very different from sort of the core traditional roles, responsibilities, and products of the organization. So CancerLink was conceived as an initiative to collect real-world evidence out of the back end of electronic medical record systems on every consecutive cancer patient, to collect that data, to de-identify it, anonymize it, and then to interrogate that information. Things that were outside of the wheelhouse of ASCO in terms of technical capabilities. And ASCO, over a long period of time, made some, I think, really key and precise decisions about what ASCO needed to own and what needed to be outsourced for this to be important. And where ASCO landed was that the relationship with the member should always be held and controlled by ASCO. And that everything beyond that, from a technology perspective, should be outsourced to experts in that domain, whether it's a solution for de-identification, whether it's a solution for integrating into the back end of medical record systems, whether it was data harmonization, what have you. And it was the clarity that ASCO had around owning the relationship with the member and then being able to say to the member, we as ASCO are asking you to share this very sensitive information with us. And we pledge to safeguard this and use it for the right purposes, right, to achieve improvements in clinical care by looking at large cohorts of patients over time. And it's been a very successful initiative, very different from the types of things that most medical societies, scholarly societies are involved in. We're seeing more and more of these types of real-world evidence initiatives pop up here and there. But it really caused an appropriate sort of soul-searching as to who needs to own what to make this successful and to be able to ensure the long-term viability and integrity of the initiative.
So the clarity of goals, the communication seem to be sort of very key and central to success there. Yeah. So Samir, you've also shared with me some experience and involvement that you've had with the American Heart Association and a project that they've been engaged with. And some of these things are really to blow your mind. It's sort of the kind of skill and an effort that some associations are, the things that they're undertaking to take their businesses in whole new areas. We talk a lot about journals and about sort of traditional models, but there's lots of examples here too. And I think CancerLink and the American Heart Association are another good example of where they're taking their businesses in a whole new direction, and they're looking at technology as an essential component of that. And I think it's important to sort of understand how are they doing that?
Okay. So we've been working with the American Heart Association for about 5 years now. I think it's a great case study. of evolution of a society getting involved in technology and then evolving their business and actually completely transforming their business. So 5 years ago, actually John Miners, who's the head of ECC and the chief of mission at the American Heart Association, and if you think about who holds the vision, he clearly had the vision. He's been at the AHA for over 15 years. And I think what happened is, as technology evolved, they did have technology partners. They had, and their key delivery platforms for certification. AHA, if you're not familiar, does about 20 million certifications per year. This is advanced cardio life support, basic life support. This is CPR training for all medical professionals across America and the rest of the world. But so how they did that, 10 years before, they had a local, small boutique consulting firm that actually built their learning and content platform. They also partnered with, you might be familiar with a company called HealthStream. They're in all the hospitals across the US. So those were their two biggest delivery platforms. And I think what happened is, they learned the business using these two platform partners. And as they got to know the industry, got to know technology, John realized that he needed an alternative. Like you just mentioned, the ownership. What should AHA own? And I think when he realized that, he then had probably the vision to actually execute. I think they did multiple RFPs. We were a participant in that RFP 5 years ago. And that RFP was just for their book delivery. And it was a competitive bid. We actually won it, and that's how we started. But amazingly, 5 years ago, John told me, hey, this book delivery system is just the tip of the iceberg. I want to do multiple other things. What you have to do, Samir, is deliver and deliver really well. So that's what happened. We, launched the book solution. It did really, really well. But then 2 years into it, I guess we passed the test. He said, hey, now we're going to start actually migrating some of their content and learning that was in their traditional systems over to you. Let's build functionality. And he had a vision, and his team had a vision of what kind of functionality. We started building that. And slowly, it became not only a book delivery system, but an integrated content learning platform, which did superbly well. The other element of this was that, to teach CPR, there's a mannequin. And traditionally how they've done it is these certifications happen every 2 years. And the doctors and the nurses and the technicians take 2 days off every 2 years to actually go and get the certification. John wanted to transform that business to actually make it a subscription-based business versus a 2-year certification business, where they would actually deploy these mannequins that are connected to the internet, connected to the LMS system and their content delivery system, and actually make it a subscription.
You mean
where,
the real,
yeah, the mannequin.
dolls?
Yeah. It's in the hospitals, in the clinics, pretty much. Instead of you leaving the hospital and going out for 2 days, this is now an IoT-operated mannequin that's connected to the LMS. You can now, go online, do your reading, take a simulation course, and then when you have to do the physical,
That's so awesome.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and it's transformed their business, and their revenues are going to be 5 times higher. So it's from being a 2-year, $200 certification to be an annual subscription. But it helps the hospitals and clinics because the 2 days that the doctor or the nurse is out to actually do the testing, they have to find a replacement for it. So, again, vision, John Miners, fantastic vision, execution, finding a partner, testing that partner, communication, design, all of that. And it was actually a tri-party engagement. It was the American Heart, which had the science and the content. It was us, which had the learning and content delivery platform. And it's a company called Laerdal that had the simulation software as well as the mannequin. So we've now deployed it. It's transformed their whole business. It's super exciting. But I think clearly having ownership and the vision, and that direction gives companies like ourselves a much easier task in saying, okay, yes, we can do that. When they know what they want, it helps us to deliver to those expectations. So it's been a great ride, and actually, technology is an enabler. It's not rocket science. I think you as an organization or the AHA, as an example, know what you need to do for your market, for your customers, and have some either good partners, consultants, and all to actually now build it. So, the AHA did that, and not only are they, we've got some great, it's been fantastic working together and trying to innovate and leverage some of these technologies.
Any, Elizabeth or Kevin, any questions for Samir on that? So we have a couple of options. We can go into some of the horror stories as well. Or open up the floor for questions about some of these examples that you've heard about sort of more about the magic sauce. Any questions at this time?
Elizabeth, you talked about the process of defining the requirements and the implementation of your initial platform in the peer review system. How do you maintain its relevance, its currency? That's a lot to keep up with. So how do you guys staff and resource appropriately for that?
Yeah, so on the pub side, we actually look at one of our teams is production and technology. And for us, the production side has become so automated that they're not traditional pubs folks in that sense. The team members all have a lot of technology that they are integrating into their workflows. So we do a lot of training, a ton of training. And then on the IT side, what we found was because that maintenance that you talk about is so critical, one of the advantages of having your own platform is you've got a lot of flexibility. So when you need to make a change, you can do it quickly. Well, you can only do it quickly if you have resource on the IT side that's going to help you do that. And so we struck a deal with the IT team that we have one dedicated resource just to pubs. And this individual does a lot for us. And in fact, now we've just hired someone else who's going to do business intelligence. So we're now starting to interrogate the data in a way because we've got it structured so that we can do that. But I think for us, it's that dedicated individual, which also poses a risk. So we've got one individual in IT who has huge institutional knowledge for us. And we've talked a lot about, well, should we hire a backup? How are we going to do this? And what we found is when we built the peer review system, we really did a lot of cross-training so that the individual who really knows the peer review side of it also now knows a fair amount of the platform side because they're integrated, and especially now with open access and the importance on payment systems and how you do that integration. But it's a real risk. If Josh leaves, that leaves a big hole for us. And so we've talked a lot about, for a while, we had an outsource group that was kind of doing some of that background. And we found that we were spending more time training the outsource group. So we're knocking on wood, and we're really hoping. It's not the best strategy, but we tend to have long tenured staff, as most societies do. And I think, but the combination of individuals in IT who now have enough background, we wouldn't be totally lost, but we would certainly lose a big resource if that happens. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think just to follow up on that briefly, a great comment and point about a single point of failure, right? And if on these homegrown systems where you have small in-house teams, if someone gets hit by a meteorite, walking across the street, or if Amazon opens a headquarters near you and pays, premium wages, what do you do then, right? And there's no one right solution for this, but that single point of failure piece is really a risk.
Nick Weir-Williams, Ingenta. We're a software provider, and I've done a lot of implementations over the years, as Samir would know, and some of the people in the room would too, some of which have been successful and some of which have been horrendously disastrous. And I completely endorse much of what each of you have said, but I'd add one question for you. I completely agree that it is not going to succeed unless you have a strategic ownership from the very beginning, from the top of the company, to say this is what we want to do, this is what we're going to achieve, with buy-in from everyone else. And I completely agree that you need a discovery session that brings in all the stakeholders. You get clear requirements documents. At which point, my question, my feeling, my observation is that you need it to stop being a democracy, and you need an owner, a product owner, to see you through implementation and go live, because that's the point at which it starts to go astray, in that all of the people who are doing the testing and the users start to change their mind, and they start, well, it would be great if we just tweaked it this way, put in this change request, changed all of this. We don't think we actually explained ourselves properly. And that leads almost inevitably to disaster. And you need a firm product owner, and I've worked with a lot of very large companies who can't do this, who will say, no, we've bought the product, we've defined what we want to do, now we're going to do it and get it in. To, I think, the point you made, Kevin, the more change requests you do, the more you destabilize the product that you've bought, the harder it is to get it right. And you end up with everyone disagreeing with each other. So in terms of ownership, it's not just the vision, but it's actually a firm product owner. You can't expect the software provider to do that for you. If the business process needs to change, the product owner needs to make sure that the business process is changed. But that ownership stage in implementation and go live is really critical to a successful project. Otherwise, despite all the stuff you've done, they fall apart. That's my question for you, whether you'd agree with that.
I mean, I would. I would tell you that there have been very few occasions where I've had to step in as the quote-unquote product owner, because what has happened is the team has worked that out ahead of time. So when it boils down to this is a feature that a volunteer has requested, or someone on the IT side says, I saw this on another platform, this would be great here. Ultimately, if the team hasn't been able to work it out, and I can think it's maybe happened twice in 9 years that I've had to step in and say, either we're going to go the direction that IT says because they have the technical expertise, and that's the ultimate for us where that had to be, or this is essential to the needs of the community, and so I'm sorry, we've got to find another technology solution because we can't compromise on this.
I mean, just to, what's super critical in software development is process. And what you said, it's correct. It's not a democracy. It is democracy in ideas, but at some point, decisions have to be made. I think in the whole software development lifecycle and project execution, you've got a clear process of, if it's agile, you've got daily stand-up meetings, but then you have your weekly meetings, but then you have the different layers of project ownership, from the engineering level to the project manager level to the executive sponsor. So if you have a cadence in process, in execution of project, at these different level of meetings, and finally the executive sponsor is the one who makes these authoritative, not a democratic decisions where you have to make a decision. So if you have that process, and it's all about process. Software development's actually, it is simple. It can be you can make it as complex as you want, but if you break it down, if you follow the process, you can execute efficiently.
I think that's really important. I'll say a couple of things. One, we use an agile process. Our IT team does. They do meet. They have Scrum meetings every day. And at the same time, on a bi-weekly basis, the pubs and IT team get together. And we have a list of projects that we want to get done as the program area. But we prioritize. We look where we've been, what kind of challenges, if there are any, that IT has faced along the way. And then we go, okay, these are the A projects, these are the B projects, these are the C projects. And we very clearly define what has to get done. So recently we implemented Counter 5. That for us was a time sensitive. We wanted to be one of the first ones to market with that on our platform. We wanted to be able to work with librarians who had asked us about that. We put some other things on hold, things that were actually farther along in the development process, because we made a conscious decision to say it's more important for us to launch the year with Counter 5 being deployed than it is to put in XYZ fix. That's a nice to have, but it wasn't so critical to the usability or the discoverability of the content on our platform. So I wholeheartedly agree with that.
And I think, it's, geeky as it is. I think software development has evolved over the last 10 years, and we moved from waterfall to agile, and it's really lots of fun. I'm not an engineer. I dream of what kind of products to build, but it's really fantastic to work with the engineering group where it's not about, hey, here's my dream, go and build it, come back after 4 months, and it might not be working. Now we're broken down that the cycles to be 2-week cycles. So we're really running, and we can see results, and we've broken down the projects into multiple parts. So if something's going wrong, you can pretty much quickly identify the problem and rectify it. We're even now thinking of doing sprint runs in 1-week cycles. That is aggressive, but it gives you momentum, it gives you flexibility, and it allows you to actually respond to market faster. So yes, you have a design document, but if you need to change, you can change and respond to what your customers need.
Yeah, just one follow-up point on that. For me, technology is easy. People are hard, right? And getting the people part of these projects right is the hardest part. And to the points that you were making about who's the owner and how are they empowered and are they supported, it really gets back to organizational health at a high level. Having trust amongst the leadership in the organization, having an open dialogue, an ongoing open dialogue, and it sounds like your organization is very healthy in that regard, that you're able to have those discussions yet stay on track, and sort of the balkanization that one sees sometimes in these large projects for complex organizations has not happened.
Well, I'll give you another example. Oh. So, as many of you may also have meetings. OSA has that. Our meetings team has been using an outsourced system for their conference proceedings, but ultimately that content resides on our platform, on our publishing platform. And in many ways, OSA, again, like I think a lot of you, this will resonate with you in societies, we were siloed. Pubs did pubs, meetings did meetings, advocacy did advocacy. And I think as we've all begun to mature, or the market has changed, we're becoming much more integrated. And so we're in a process now where our meetings team is at a stage where they need to have an RFP process. And they're looking at a new system. The challenge is that they see that system as just for meetings, right? And the pubs folks are saying, well wait a minute. Hey guys, you're asking us to publish that content ahead of time because you want to give it to attendees, and yet, that QC stuff that you don't like to do, that metadata, well, that's really important when it comes to publishing. And so understanding that different programs have different needs and trying to get staff in different departments to buy into, hey, we're all stakeholders in this. This is not just a pubs product. This is not just a meetings product. This is, I'm an end user. I'm an author. I've got an H-index. I want that meetings abstract. I need that to be published, and I need it to be cited. And yes, the first step along the way is I have to get my meeting abstract accepted so that I can go and speak at a meeting. But ultimately, that's not the end of my engagement. And our meetings team has been thinking, well, that's all we're responsible for. Like, we have to deliver a really good meeting. And we're going, well, wait a minute. But the user is looking at this as a continuum. It starts here, but ultimately it ends here. And so we've had some really challenging discussions about who owns that vision, right? Because both groups have a really important piece to play. And that negotiation, it's tough. And if I'm a meetings person, I got to make sure that that system is going to meet the needs of authors coming in. I got to make sure I've got attendees coming to the meeting. If I'm the pubs person, yeah, don't give me crap. Don't send your content that it's missing titles and authors aren't there and authors want to change. So it's a tough nut to crack, and I don't think we have solved it yet, but we are definitely at a place where we're having really good discussions, where there's a lot more respect for the different roles that each group plays, and we're trying to find that happy medium to say, ultimately, it's the organization that has to serve the community. It's just not one silo here or one silo there. So we haven't solved that nut yet, but we're working on it.
That's great. With some more questions?
Yeah, so I often thought that larger organizations sometimes have an IT department that runs the office infrastructure and then a separate IT department of sorts that supports the product output. And so I'm thinking about you, Elizabeth. If you had a blank check, what would be your preference? What would be your ideal? And I think I have the same question for Samir and Kevin. Is there such thing as an ideal out there?
I think for us, I would say what we have is ideal. It's hybrid, right? So we have a dedicated person within IT, and that person feels part of the pubs team, but he also is very much a part of the IT team. And there are others on the IT team who also, because we have biweekly meetings, and they have daily Scrum meetings, as Samir was talking about. So I think the hybrid model probably is best. We've talked a lot about should the dedicated IT person, should that person be part of pubs? Should that person be part of IT? Ultimately, we've decided, you're right, it doesn't matter. It's what are we trying to do and where's that person going to be best served?
So your dedicated, did I shut it off? Your dedicated IT person is someone who would actually make recommendations about bringing in other resources as may be needed?
So he may not do that. He does more of the implementation. We do have a solutions architect who talks about either the pubs folks will bring new technology forward or the IT team. They'll see something at a conference they're at and they'll say, we're bringing this forward. So we have a very comfortable relationship that it's not one party or the other. It's, oh, I remember that you guys were looking for X, Y, and Z. I sat in the pubs council meeting and your volunteers were talking about this need. Could this help fill that?
But I think your question, the IT department and the other IT department, is the IT department that, fixes your laptops, the hosting, that is IT. Yeah. Separate. They actually don't get involved in business strategy. They're making sure your laptops work, that, from an information security, privacy, those things get taken care of. The digital transformation is actually a completely different skill set. And it's a different department. These guys know technology really well. They're either engineers who are deep tech guys, but who also understand business and can take that business requirement and mold it into a solution. So the IT department is just pure IT. It's really hardware, privacy, cloud, really just pure tech. Digital transformation, technology solutioning, it's another department that... I mean, for us, that applications development department that you're talking about, it's part of IT. It's one of the three subsets. So we clearly have, here's the group that's just dealing with the computers and making sure that they're up and running. And then it's a group.
It's a group.
Yep.
And then we have the group that's really just focused on applications development. And then we have the business solutions group. And they're the folks who are really working with the programs to say, you may not be able to articulate what your needs are, but let's develop some use cases. Let's talk about XYZ volunteer and what he or she needs, And from that, they're helping to craft what those requirements need to be without the person on the program side having to know that. And I think that's been pivotal. I've been at other places where that didn't exist, and that's where the breakdown between IT and the program really existed.
So, Andrea, you have a question, or?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up agile development earlier, because I'm a big believer in that. And kind of related to that, I really believe in continuous improvement, and I wonder what the role is in your organization of that, and do you give people training in Six Sigma type of processes?
Is that for me?
I think so.
Kevin, do you have a?
No, please.
We don't do Six Sigma. We do regular training. So many of the folks on what we call the production technology team, they go to JATS conferences. They're constantly going to XML type conferences. They're very engaged in the particular types of technology. This team tends to be very, as most publishing organizations are, very process-oriented and very automation-oriented. And so they are constantly looking for how to evolve the workflow. So we've brought in a new partner for one of our open access journals, and we've completely re-engineered how we are handling one of our workflows. And the idea is we pilot it, in this case with a new journal that's got small volume, with the idea that if it works well there, then we'll roll it out. And we've always done that. We always try to pilot it small and then grow over time.
So maybe one last question. So David, do you have a question?
It's not so much a question, it's also a free advertising on behalf of ASCO, and that is, we're seeing, and Kevin mentioned, how important strategy and ownership and leadership is, and what we're seeing at ASCO is, and Elizabeth, you touched on this, is that as much as we would like the different departments to collaborate and work together on platforms and strategy and all of those wonderful things, in a larger organization with lots of different departments, you have these unbreakable silos. And so we came to the conclusion that to execute our digital integration strategy, we need a leader. We need a chief digital officer to bring together the different visions and departments, because there is this growing intersection between publishing and marketing and strategy. And we recognize that we're not going to be able to crack that nut and deliver the experience that our CEO expects us to deliver for our members. And what he says is, our members don't care what our problems are with our technology and our workflows. They just want that Amazon experience. They don't want to know all the problems that you're experiencing on the back end. Just give me a personalized, seamless experience. And that's the challenge that we have. And so we're moving towards hiring a CDO. So if anyone knows of a high caliber person looking for a new opportunity, get in touch with me.
That's great. Thanks, David. So we need to wrap it up. And there's three sort of concluding thoughts out of this wonderful panel, like with really sharp minds here, with excellent examples of how they're collaborating on moving the organizations forward. But I see one theme around communication and alignment, really the conversations that are not happening just once, but throughout. But also a portion of that is a very strong vision at the onset of that, and being inclusive in involving people. That's one area. The two is that when you get into trouble, you have to sort of center around the end user. You have to center around the member or the end user that you're trying to service as the way to sort of navigate through when those conflicts are. And then a third one is that you can facilitate that entire effort with good processes. You can make it easier on yourself by sort of defining how you do your work together, whether that is a chief digital officer or agile or any of the things that we've talked about. I think all those things they make a difference. So I found this extremely enlightening. I want to thank Kevin, Elizabeth, and Samir for their time, and thanks to all of you for your attention.
Thank you.